Okay, I'll jump right into it. So, tips to sound advanced. Now, I know the title sounds kind of cheap, like I'm trying to give you a whole bunch of tricks so you can dupe an examiner into believing that you're advanced when you're really not. Well, that is, of course, not my intention at all. This is just let's call it a summary of a lot of stuff that we have seen in class, all right? Now, that's me. How do you like my cartoon version? All right, nuances. I have repeated a million times. The C1 level is all about nuances, and a picture is worth 1,000 words. So check out that photograph. Now it's not as sharp as I would like it to be, but the left part of the photograph clearly is all pixeled, and that's what you get. You don't get enough information when you don't have the necessary number of words or structures when you're not diverse. So what do you think of that? You know, you got the good part, you get more input, more information, or not. And this is something that my former coworker Raquel once told me. She came up with this wonderful analogy. When you speak with very simple words, it's like that. You see that picture is a game of Legos for 3-year-olds. Now they're big, big building blocks. But you can have those as well. Those are Legos as well. So with a lot of small pieces, you can actually come up with a sculpture that looks artistic, even if the original intention might not be so lofty. But that's the difference between simple words and a lot of different nuanced synonyms, near synonyms, connotations, you name it. So the spectrum, that is my favorite analogy, right? Things are not black and white, on and off. There is a spectrum. Let's take something as simple as tall and short. Now, when you first start learning a language, you're happy to say, she's short, she's tall, whatever. And then as time goes by, you discover that there is, people that are medium height. Now we have 3 references, but of course you can be on the short side. That doesn't mean that you're really short, but you're probably not average height either. Or you can be tallish, slightly above the average, and yet nobody would say that you're tall. Now you're gigantic when you're, I don't know, an NBA center, or and you're a midget when you're spectacularly small or obviously small. I mean, it's more than small. It's like petite. Freakishly tall is the kind of combination that really expresses your opinion. That's what you think about that. Your height or your general appearance makes you look slightly freakish. Kind of short maybe sort of cushions the blow a little. You say sort of short, kind of short, because it can be blunt or maybe verging on the offensive to say just short. Puny looking looks really, really small. Average height I have used earlier. It's just another alternative to medium height. But you can all, of course, say not particularly tall. The moment you mention a positive adjective, and I'm sorry, but in our culture, tall sounds positive. It sounds better than not particularly short, even though you're basically saying not short, not tall. All right. Now, over here we have cuts an imposing figure. That's a rather elaborate way of saying that the person is, impressive. Probably because of their demeanor, their size, or whatever. But it can be used to describe someone that is, clearly tall and maybe intimidating. Goliath is a biblical character, so that would be a cultured reference. You have to know the book to, in theory, well, you shouldn't know a lot about the Bible to know that Goliath was a giant. And Amazon is, of course, a tall, strong woman. It has connotations. Traditionally, was connected to masculine-looking woman. I don't know what the public perception of that word is now, because things are changing quite rapidly. Dwarf, Lilliputian, or Hobbit are, of course, references to folklore. Now, in short, this is the quintessential tsunami of vocabulary that we experience very often in the classroom. Sometimes you feel overwhelmed, but trying to look on the bright side, when you have so much to choose from, you can cherry pick the exact term, and remember the photograph. The photograph looks a lot sharper, a lot better. All right. So in terms of descriptions, this is a very practical example. Just 3 weeks ago, this made the news. I don't know if you can place that photograph. Do you know what that is? That is a homemade rocket, believe it or not, that this guy built in his garage. That is quite an American thing to do, to build the first personal computer in your garage. Or in this particular case, the guy, Mike Hughes, believed that the Earth is flat, and he set out to prove that by taking pictures, or I don't know exactly what he was trying to accomplish. When he put himself inside that rocket, and it was launched into the sky, only to plummet to his subsequent death because the rocket malfunctioned. Anyway, the press described him as a daredevil rocket maker. Now, would you come up with such a thing? Sounds very nice. This other website is more elaborate. A self-taught rocket scientist and self-avowed flat Earth conspiracy theorist. That's quite a mouthful there, but very well written, as a matter of fact. And these two are, that is CBS News, and this one is Live Science. Now, if we, if you knew the whole story, I mean, this guy actually believed that the Earth is flat, and the sun actually goes around the Earth. That's a rather medieval approach, even though, the fact that the Earth was round was, well known even before the Common Era. So, well, anyway, let's not go into that. But the point is, you might say, in this day and age, this guy actually believes that the Earth is flat. This guy is mad as a hatter. That is a common idiom. It wouldn't be insulting in this particular case, because check that out. That is the name, that is his website. He called himself Mad Mike Hughes. So he would have loved that, mad as a hatter. Maybe not Nutcase, which is an alternative that is obviously disparaging, or Nutter, also derogatory. He's a complete idiot would be colloquial, and needless to say, offensive. He's a flat earther. That is a rather neutral description, because that's what he was. A maverick can even strike a positive note. Batshit crazy is obviously quite slangy, and it's offensive. And finally, a rebel. Now, you can select whatever description you want, but my point is, in the advanced level, you have that menu. You can pick and choose. If you say that I think the guy was crazy, well, that doesn't really sound quite nuanced. And I don't need to expand on that, do I? All right, so the perfect cocktail to me is not a description that combines all possible elements. That would be unreasonable. But it's the one that allows you to use a noun or an adjective, or a combination of an adverb and an adjective. Adjective noun is another typical combination. Then you can soften your choices by saying a bit of a taxidermist, which means that he didn't do that professionally, maybe, or he was something of a social climber. Like, you don't want to be blunt about that, maybe. Still, phrases. You can say, she's the kind of woman that, and then you proceed to use whatever combination you find suitable. He's someone you can trust. Well, that's an alternative to adjectives like trustworthy or trustable or, reliable, dependable. I don't know. So, but lexical accuracy demands that if you're talking about movies, we need movie vocabulary. If you're talking about the coronavirus, and I mean, in our circumstances, it's virtually unavoidable. We have vocabulary that cannot be just general. We cannot just say general terms, blanket terms like a doctor. Doctor doesn't really cut it, maybe, when you're talking about a virologist or a medical researcher. So we have here adjectives like, look at this. This is all vocabulary we can use to describe situations, patients. Collocations like carry the virus. You don't take it, you're not a porter, you carry the virus. Vulnerable populations. To meet in person, now that people are meeting online, for instance, it would be appropriate to use an in-person event, the number of infected people is increasing exponentially. That's a nice, I mean, the meaning is not nice, but it's proper English and sounds good. Medical researchers, we're on a lockdown. We are. It's a pandemic. If you say disease, that's not accurate enough. This is a global event, so it's not a local epidemic. It's a pandemic. Okay, public health officials. And chunks are all those sequences like poses a huge risk of death for, that's beautiful, to uphold the social distancing requirement. This is brand new. We haven't talked about social distancing in the in this course. I believe this is, but people who are showing no signs. Well, if you cannot think of the technical symptomatic, okay, showing no signs. To slow the spread of infection. Now, all of this vocabulary, I think we all agree, is quite specific and is quite useful, well, basically to discuss a pandemic like the one we are experiencing these days, all right? Okay, I forgot that. To comply with the stay-at-home rules, yeah. Well, I am here working for you at home, and you are at home following this presentation. Okay. So lexical accuracy, and this is a practical case. We're not going to talk about the COVID-19. Let's talk about something as basic as eating. Look at all those expressions. There are ways of eating or phrases that are used to discuss food. Now, it's in for my C11 students. It's on page 61 of our textbook. Do you remember that vocabulary? How would you say eat unwillingly? Like somebody places a plate and you don't want to be impolite, so you just pick at whatever you're given, but you're not really into it because you don't enjoy that food. To warm up food, because you can boil food or roast food or heat food because you're cooking. This is not because you're cooking. It's because you want to eat it that way, warm. All right. So to whip up a salad, I don't have the time, but I can, whip up a sandwich or something. To whip up something is to prepare a meal very quickly. Tuck in, which is, I must say, very British. You tuck into your dinner. You start eating like you're really hungry, starving. dine out, to pack away. I mean, all these words are food related, basically related to eating. Okay, that would be a case of lexical accuracy that is not stilted or sophisticated, and it's not about a topic that you might say out of reach for the regular Joe in the street. Okay. Now let's shift gears slightly by looking at a grammatical solution that can sort of spice up your English a little bit. It's the so-called WH subjects. Now, these are WH words. They all start with a WH except for how. But, you know, to be honest, all those words used to be, a couple of centuries ago, used to be pronounced where, when, why, what. Actually, only who keeps that pronunciation. But if you go to the East Coast of the United States and you strike up a conversation with a 70-plus-year-old citizen, you might hear the what, the why. You know, it's a little overpronouncing it, but it still exists. Anyway, these words can be the beginning of sentences like this. How he managed to keep it a secret is beyond me. Now, the stuff in red is a subject. That is quite a long subject. All right. Again, whether Jeff will be shortlisted. Now, that is another long-winded subject. I don't believe that these sentences can be uttered, produced by an intermediate speaker. See, doesn't really take a real rocket scientist to figure that out. And we come to the cleft sentences. What I cannot fully comprehend is his sheer arrogance. Okay, you place the focus of attention on arrogance by fronting. What I cannot really comprehend is, now people are paying attention because they don't know what you're going on about, and now, boom, you drop the bomb. You say his sheer arrogance. You can rephrase that into, it's his sheer arrogance that I cannot comprehend. So that is, one version of the original sentence, and these are, like I said, called cleft sentences. So far, so good. I would probably say that you are more likely to use a cleft sentence that you are likely to use this super long subjects. But trust me, I mean, if you can, I mean, should not abuse any of this stuff that I'm telling you, but if you can handle a long subject like that makes sense, that gives the reader the impression that the person is, in control, in command of sophisticated grammar, right? Quite quickly, to be is different from to seem to be or to appear to be, and that we have seen. This is from the C12 textbook. He seems fairly laid back, and now there we have what I just described earlier. So we don't say he is. Things are not black and white. He is, he's not. He seems, I have the impression. And then he's fairly laid back. So we have adverb, adjective. Perfect. He strikes me as, comes across as. In class we have seen he comes off as, which is basically the same thing. All right? Now, conversation practice, you have an exercise right there. You can think even as a thought experiment. You say, okay, how would I describe someone unusual in my family, someone eccentric, flamboyant, if you will? And you try and come up with a description, all right? Frequency and tendency, this is again a way of fighting he is, he's not. You can say he tends to over-explain things. Well, that is a tendency he has, all right? People often complain about it, not always. I have said in class how irritating and annoying it is when someone says, "Oh, you're always doing this." Of course, they're just, trying to complain about it. But when they say you're always doing that, that is an outright lie right there, because you're not always doing that. You don't always do anything all the time, all right? I am prone to having stupid accidents. Prone to. That's a proclivity that I have. I can be a pain in the neck, not necessarily all the time. And finally, he's inclined to believe anything. So, okay, we might go down a different road and say he's quite gullible. But this sounds, not so terse, so curt, so abrupt. Okay, you say he's inclined to. One of the final comments that I have to make is about your comments. When you're able to comment on your statements, that means that you are so owning the sentence that you're about to say that you don't have any doubts. So you kind of allow yourself to be smart about, or to be your own critic in a certain way. Okay, strike that comment. Not smart. You can say something stupid and still use these structures. I do that all the time. All right. So how about this? Strange as it may seem. Now bear in mind that this is completely unnecessary. You could say eating live snails was once considered, all right? It's unnecessary. That's why it's advanced, because you can allow to use these little frills, this little, it's decorative, if you will, all right? Oddly enough, it means that you think it's odd. So that expresses your opinion and say, I felt quite intimidated. There are variations on this. You can say, bizarrely enough, strangely enough, interestingly enough, that. While that might be true, now this is really unusual in this neck of the woods. We don't usually do that. We don't tend to say, having said that, and those expressions. We tend to say, well, this is what I believe. I don't think blah, blah, blah. This is my opinion. Do you agree? You don't. But this sort of concedes a point, and you say, okay, I don't know what your conversation partner has said, but you might say, okay, yes, that thing you just said, that might be true, but okay, well, this is a way of avoiding that basic term, but. All right, well, that might be true. All joking aside, meaning you have been cracking jokes about her, and now you decide to get serious and say, okay, all joking aside, like, let's get serious. She's an accomplished pianist. All right. So let's compare. It shocked Dave. They're having problems. It's a very religious society. It's a sexist society. Now, those are rather intermediate, simple ways of expressing easy to understand ideas. But check this out. It came as a shock to Dave. They're going through a bit of a rough patch. Yeah, a bit of a rough patch doesn't mean that their marriage is on the rocks necessarily, or that they are about to break up. It's just more nuanced. It offers more information than just problems. What kind of a problem is it? Is something that is fleeting? It's temporary. It's a trial separation. It's okay. It's basically a very secular society. Very secular doesn't mean that they are not religious at all, but like we can say right after that, they have lost touch with their traditions. A lot more nuanced and therefore more interesting than just very religious or not religious. As a matter of fact, I just realized that I should have said they are not a very religious society. If they are secular, they are not religious. Okay, I'm sorry about that. Anyway, it's a sexist society. You don't say how. It's quite a male-dominated society. It has such heavy connotations to say that society is still male-dominated. Now, the choice of that word might strike a different note than, I don't know, you might say a macho society, or a chauvinist, a male chauvinistic society. I don't know, but that choice is relevant. All right, women are looked down on. Well, needless to say, that's even more than just sexist. That is wow. Yeah, I can think of countries that fit that description, but I'm not going to go there. And C1 topics. Okay, this is the last slide in case you are looking at the watch. Um, okay, C1 topics. There is this obsession with topics that I think is sort of misguided. A lot of people try to prepare for the exam thinking, okay, what are these C1 topics? Okay, yes, there are some topics that are exclusively C1 that cannot be dealt with if you don't know the specific vocabulary. My pet example would be, going into labor. Anything you talk about pregnancy is just specific, not many synonyms there. But the topics can be general topics, and yet it's the approach that to me makes a difference. And in order to articulate sophisticated arguments, compelling arguments, you need keywords. I'm not going to give you the keywords, but I'm going to suggest some topics, for instance, technology, relationships, science, politics, achievements. Now, those are rather general topics. How do you discuss technology at a C1 level? At the C1 level, you can talk about the filter bubble, which might lead you to complex concepts in terms of the algorithms that search engines have, or you might take a different path and talk about social media. All right. When you talk about relationships, you can talk about conflict. Conflict is prickly, rather hairy subject. You want to talk about couples therapy and counseling, or living together, roommates. It doesn't need to be about romantic relationships. But if it is about romantic relationships, how about online dating, which, has its own lingo? Science might demand, terms connected with research. For instance, how about neuroscience or biology or bioengineering? They require certain key words. All right. Politics. You can discuss social policies that may or may not be controversial. Immigrants, well, that's a hot button issue, isn't it? Achievements, we have seen that in the C11 class, pioneers, people that break new ground, revolutionaries, historic figures. These are intertwined somehow. Look at this. Social media is connected to online dating. Conflict can arise in issues pertaining to social policies. Neuroscience might be construed as a topic that involves mentioning certain scientists. So social media is, linked to research as well. There is research into social media, and there is research and development connected to social networking websites. So as you can see, it's not so clear cut in terms of I talk about this and this is the only vocabulary I can use. You can go in different ways, in different directions. That's why you are given 10, 15 minutes to take notes before the oral exam, because you need to plan things out carefully. So whether it's a politician talking about social media or research and development, the amount of keywords, specific vocabulary, or also general terms, phrases that you need, all that stuff that we have seen, how to voice an opinion, how to place emphasis can be used in any conversation as well. It doesn't need to be specific to a particular topic. But all that can be perceived as yet another tsunami of vocabulary structures and snippets of information that can be overwhelming. All right. So this is the end of my presentation. I hope that this can help you in a certain way. It can ring some bells and make you realize of some of the core issues that we have tackled in the classroom. All right. Anyway, this is it for today. I'll be back with new presentations about hopefully practical material. Bye.